You know, my life is like one of those old Swiss watches, the kind your grandfather leaves you, all intricate gears and precise movements, ticking along in a way that's reliable as hell, but also, if I'm being honest, boring as shit. Predictable, safe, that's how I liked it. Every morning, coffee at 6:05 a.m., writing from 6:30 to noon. Every afternoon, a walk, but only ever turning left out of my driveway, a perfect 2-mile loop that never ever took me near the back of the house. Every evening, reading until my eyes burned, then the ritual. The ritual was the most important part. It started at the front door. Click. The deadbolt slid home with a satisfying thud. Then the chain. Rattle, slide, secure. I'd move through the downstairs rooms, my hand brushing over each window latch, checking, always checking. Kitchen window, locked. Dining room, locked. Living room, 2 windows, both locked. It was muscle memory, a dance I did every night. But my hand always hesitated on that last deadbolt, the one on the back door. Through the small glass pane, the woods started right where my lawn gave up, a solid wall of black trunks and deeper shadows. Even in the daylight, it looked dense, wrong. At night, it was just a void, a patch of nothing that swallowed the light from my kitchen. My breath would catch, just for a second. My fingers would feel slick on the cold brass turnkey. Then, click, locked. I'd pull the curtain shut over the glass. Always. I never looked at it for too long. Then, Chloe arrived. She was like a damn tornado of bright colors and noise, blowing into my meticulously ordered, gray little world. A second-year art student, she said. Needed a cheap room for the semester. The attic was just collecting dust, and God knows I needed the money. So I said yes. I regretted it almost immediately. "Wow, this place has so much character," she chirped on her first day, dropping a duffel bag full of what sounded like paint cans onto my antique hardwood floor. I flinched. I handed her a single sheet of paper. "These are the rules." She took it, her eyes scanning the list. They were wide, curious eyes, the kind that don't miss anything. I hated them already. No loud music after 10 p.m. Keep common areas clean. No overnight guests without permission, she read aloud, a little smile playing on her lips. Then she got to the last one. Her smile faltered. Absolutely no entry into the woods behind the property. That's specific. "It's for your own safety," I said, my voice flat. "It's easy to get lost. No exceptions." "Okay, sure," she said, shrugging, but her eyes flicked past my shoulder, towards the back door, towards the curtain I kept drawn. The curiosity didn't leave her face. It just went under the surface. I knew right then she was going to be a problem. She set up her life in my attic, and suddenly my house was filled with the smell of turpentine and the faint, infuriating sound of indie folk music. She was working on a photography project, she told me one afternoon, catching me in the kitchen as I was making tea. "It's called Forgotten Tragedies of Oakhaven," she said, her energy exhausting. "This town looks so perfect on the surface, you know, but there are all these little stories, these sad things that happened that everyone just paved over. I want to capture that." I just grunted and stirred my tea. A cold knot was forming in my gut. "Stick to the town square," I mumbled. "Plenty of forgotten things there." The next day, I saw her from my study window, camera around her neck, talking to old Mrs. Henderson from next door. Mrs. Henderson was a human archive of town gossip, a walking, breathing invasion of privacy. I saw her garled finger point vaguely towards my house, towards the back. Chloe listened intently, nodding. When Chloe finally walked away, Mrs. Henderson's gaze lingered on my house for a moment too long. She caught my eye through the window, And I swear, the old bat gave me a look that was equal parts pity and something else, something knowing. It was a few nights later that the first weird thing happened. I was in bed, reading. The house was quiet. Chloe's music was off. The only sound was the turning of my page and the old house groaning. Then I heard it. Scrap. It was faint, so faint I thought I imagined it. It came downstairs, from the back of the house. Scrap. Clink. I put my book down. My heart was doing a stupid little tap dance against my ribs. I strained to listen. Silence. Just the house settling. Probably a raccoon, I told myself. Fucking raccoons. They were always trying to get into the trash. I pulled the covers up higher and forced myself to go back to my book, but the words swam on the page. The next morning, I went to take out the recycling. I unlocked the back door, my hand going through the familiar motions, but when I pushed it open, I stopped. Sitting perfectly in the middle of the top step was a single, small stone. It was black, polished smooth as glass, and felt impossibly cold in my hand. We don't have stones like that around here. Our rocks are all granite and quartz, jagged and gray. This was something else. It felt wrong, out of place. I felt a surge of irritation. Maybe Chloe dropped it. Maybe it was some kind of stupid art thing. I chucked it as hard as I could into the overgrown bushes that bordered the woods. I didn't want to look at it. Later that week, things got worse. Chloe was helping me bring some old boxes down from the attic to clear more space for her. Just old papers, I'd told her. Junk. One of the boxes was heavier than the others, its cardboard soft with age. As she set it down, the bottom gave way slightly, and a few things spilled out. Old tax returns, a high school yearbook, and a photograph. It was faded, the colors washed out to pale yellows and blues. 2 boys squinting into the sun. One was me, all skinny arms and a gapped-tooth smile. The other was older, a teenager, with the same dark hair but a quieter look in his eyes. He had his arms slung around my shoulder. Chloe picked it up before I could. "Hey, is this you?" she asked, smiling. "You were cute. Who's the other guy? Your brother?" "Yes," I said, my voice tight. "What's his name? You don't look much alike," she pressed, tilting the photo in the light. "You never talk about your family." The cold knot was back in my stomach, but this time it was bigger, heavier. "His name is David." "Oh, is he—" She trailed off, not wanting to ask. "We don't talk," I said, reaching for the photo. But she pulled it back slightly, still looking at it. "He has nice eyes. He looks so serious here, and you look so happy. It's a great picture." Something inside me snapped. The quiet, orderly world I'd built for 30 years cracked right down the middle. "Give it to me." My voice came out low, a growl. She looked up, startled by my tone. Her smile vanished. "Sorry, I just—" "Don't touch my things." The photo was in my hand before I even realized I'd moved. My fingers were clamped so tight, the cardboard edges were digging into my palm. I shoved it into my pocket, my whole body trembling with a sudden violent anger. Chloe just stared at me, her face pale. The curious, bright-eyed art student was gone. In her place was a girl looking at a stranger, a dangerous one. She took a step back, away from me and the spilled contents of my past. I'm sorry, Mark," she stammered. "I didn't mean anything by it." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood there, the shape of the photograph a hard rectangle against my leg, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. The silence in the room was huge, and it was filled with the one question I knew was now burning in her mind. The same question I'd spent a lifetime trying to bury. After she practically ran up the stairs to the attic, the silence she left behind was louder than her damned music ever was. It pressed in on me. I stood there in the hallway for a minute, maybe 5,
just listening to the house tick and groan around me. My hand was still in my pocket, wrapped around the photograph. The corners were sharp, digging into my skin. It felt like a hot coal. I finally pulled my hand out. My fingers were white where I'd been gripping it. I didn't look at the picture again. I didn't have to. I shoved it in the back of a drawer in my study, underneath a stack of old, useless maps, buried it. Again. But things weren't the same. The fragile peace I'd built for myself was gone. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside, sounded like a footstep. It was after 2 a.m. when I heard it again. Scrape. My eyes snapped open. It wasn't faint this time. It was right at the back door. Scrape. Tap. Tap. It wasn't a raccoon. Fuck no. This was deliberate. A rhythm.
Like someone dragging a long fingernail down the glass pane, then tapping it, twice. My heart did that stupid, frantic thing it does, slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. I slid out of bed, my feet cold on the wood floor. I didn't turn on a light. On my way downstairs, I grabbed the old aluminum baseball bat from the hall closet. It felt heavy and real in my hands, solid. I crept into the kitchen. The only light came from the moon, casting long, weird shadows across the floor. The curtain over the back door window was drawn, just how I'd left it. The tapping had stopped. My breath hitched. I stood there, a 40-something man holding a baseball bat in his own kitchen, terrified of a noise. What the hell was wrong with me? Slowly, I reached out and pulled the curtain back an inch. I peered through the glass. Nothing, just the yard, bathed in pale moonlight, and beyond it, the woods, a wall of impenetrable black. No movement, no person, nothing. I stood there for a long time, watching, until the bat started to feel stupid in my hands. I finally did my rounds, checked the latch, checked the deadbolt. Both were solid, locked tight. It must have been a branch, I told myself as I went back to bed. A branch scraping the glass in the wind. Yeah, that was it. But when I finally fell asleep, the dream came back. It was always the same. Me, 8 years old, lost in those woods. The sun going down. The trees turning into skeletal monsters against a bruised purple sky. I'm crying, my face wet and sticky, calling for him, calling for David. And then he's there, stepping out from between two massive oaks. He doesn't say anything. His face is pale, too pale. In the dream, I always reach for him, so relieved. But this time, it was different. When his hand took mine, the feeling was all wrong. It wasn't the warm, familiar hand of my older brother. It was cold. A deep, wet cold, like a stone pulled from the bottom of a river. And his fingers, Jesus, they felt too long. They wrapped all the way around my small wrist, the tip of his thumb and forefinger overlapping. It felt like being held by a spider. I woke up with a gasp, tangled in my sheets, my whole body slick with cold sweat. The feeling of those long, cold fingers was still on my skin. I sat there in the dark, breathing hard, until the sun came up. The next couple of days were a tightrope walk. Chloe and I moved around each other like ghosts. Polite nods in the hallway, a mumbled morning in the kitchen. She kept to her attic room, and I stayed in my study. The curiosity in her eyes was gone, replaced by something else. Wariness, maybe even a little fear. Good, maybe she'd finally learned to leave things alone. But the house didn't feel right anymore. It felt watched. Then, on Thursday, I found the second stone. I'd finished my writing for the morning and went into my study to file the pages. I did the same thing every day. Walk in, turn on the lamp, sit down. But as I sat, my eyes caught something on the windowsill. It was another one of those black stones,
polished smooth like a dark little egg. I froze. The window was locked. It was always locked. I had checked it myself the night before. All the windows, all the doors. I was meticulous, obsessive. There was no way for anyone or anything to get in. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Chloe? No, she hadn't been in my study. I would have known. The door was always closed. A bird? How the hell would a bird get through a locked window and place a stone so perfectly in the middle of the sill? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My hands were shaking. I couldn't control it. I walked over to the window and stared at the stone. It just sat there, reflecting the lamplight on its smooth surface. Utterly impossible. My carefully ordered world wasn't just cracked anymore, it was shattering. How the fuck did it get in here? The question echoed in my head, getting louder and louder until it was a scream. Later that evening, the power went out. 1 second, I was in the living room reading, the light a warm yellow pool around my armchair. The next, a loud clunk from the fuse box in the basement, and everything went black. Pitch black, the kind of darkness that feels heavy, like a blanket. Shit, I muttered, fumbling for my phone on the side table. My heart was already starting to pick up its pace. I hated power outages.
Hated the way they stripped everything away, leaving you with just the darkness and the sounds of the house. I found my phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut a nervous path through the shadows. "Chloe?" I called out. "You okay up there?" Silence. I called again, louder this time. "Chloe?" Still nothing. A prickle of unease ran up my spine. The house was dead quiet. Too quiet. I got up and walked to the bottom of the stairs, shining the flashlight up into the darkness. A faint, flickering light was visible from under her door. Candles, maybe. "Chloe, I'm coming up to check on you." My voice sounded thin. I took the stairs one at a time, the old wood groaning under my weight. The beam of my flashlight danced on the walls. When I reached her door, I knocked. "Chloe? Everything all right?" No answer. That was it. My irritation and a new, sharp fear pushed through my hesitation. I turned the knob. It was unlocked. I pushed the door open. She wasn't there. The attic room was lit by a dozen small candles, their flames dancing and throwing wild shadows on the slanted ceilings. And in the middle of the floor, right on the worn wooden planks, was a perfect circle. It was made of those goddamn black stones, at least 30 of them. For a second, I just stood there, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. The smell of melting wax and something else, something like damp earth, filled the air. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. This little brat, this was her game. The scraping, the stones, this was all some kind of sick art student prank. She was messing with me. "What the hell is this?" I said out loud to the empty room. My voice shook with anger. Just then, I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam catching her in the face. It was Chloe. She froze on the top step, one hand on the railing, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Me, standing in her room. The circle of stones. The candles. She was holding a thin manila folder, tucked under one arm. Her face went pale, completely white. "Chumark," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What?" "Don't you Chumark me," I snarled, stepping towards her. "What is this? What kind of sick game are you playing?" Her eyes darted from my face to the stones and back again. She looked genuinely terrified. I don't know. That's not... I didn't do that." "Bullshit! Who else would do it?" "I don't know," she insisted, taking a step back. Her voice was getting high and frantic. "It wasn't me, I swear. I just got back. I was at the library." She looked down at the folder in her hands, then back at me.
Her fear was real. I've seen people lie. This wasn't it. This was pure, unadulterated terror. The same kind of terror that was making the hair on my own arms stand up. My anger deflated, replaced by a cold, sinking dread. If she didn't do it, then who did? The air in the house for the next 2 days was thick enough to choke on. We didn't talk about the circle of stones. We didn't talk about anything. Chloe stayed in the attic, I stayed in my study, and when we passed in the hallway, we'd both look at the floorboards like they held the answers to the universe. The fear I'd seen in her eyes had been real, and that somehow made everything 100 times worse. It meant I wasn't the only one who felt it. The house was no longer just my quiet sanctuary. It was a cage we were both trapped in. Every night the sounds were back. The scraping, the tapping, louder now, more insistent. I stopped sleeping. I'd just lie there, staring at the shadows on my ceiling, the old baseball bat on the floor next to my bed. It was the third night when things finally broke. I was in my study, a glass of whiskey in my hand, staring at a blank page on my screen. The cursor blinked, mocking me. Writing, the one thing that had always been my anchor, was impossible. My carefully constructed world was coming apart at the seams, and I couldn't even find the words for it. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Then I heard it. It wasn't a scrape, it wasn't a tap. It was a voice, a whisper, really, faint, thin, coming from right outside my study door in the hallway. Mark! My blood went cold, fucking ice water in my veins. It was a kid's voice, a little boy's voice. And it sounded exactly like mine.
Like a recording of me when I was 8 years old, calling for my brother in the dark. Mark! I didn't breathe. I couldn't. My hand tightened around the whiskey glass, my knuckles turning white. My brain screamed at me. It's the house settling. It's the wind. It's the fucking pipes. But I knew it wasn't. I put the glass down, my hand shaking so badly that the whiskey sloshed over the rim. Next to the fireplace was a set of old iron tools. I grabbed the poker. It was heavy, solid, real. I needed something real. I wrenched the study door open and lunged into the hallway, the poker held out in front of me like a sword. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Shadows clung to the corners, but it was just a hallway. No little boy. No source for the voice. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of pure terror. I stood there for a full minute, listening, every muscle in my body screaming. And then I saw it. Down the hall, the back door. The deadbolt I checked twice every single night before bed was slid open. The door was ajar, hanging open just enough to show a slice of the night outside. A perfect, solid wall of black. The woods were waiting. Something had been inside the house, and it had just left. The next morning, I was in the kitchen, on my third cup of coffee, trying to pretend I hadn't spent the entire night sitting on the floor with my back against the bolted door, holding a fireplace poker. I felt brittle, like a piece of glass ready to shatter. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, slow and hesitant. Chloe appeared in the doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Her face was pale, her eyes were huge and shadowed. She wouldn't look at me. She was clutching a piece of paper, a flimsy, off-white sheet that looked like a printout. "Chumark," she started, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry for prying. I never should have, but I found something. I think you need to see it." She took a tentative step forward and placed the paper on the kitchen table, pushing it towards me. It was a blurry copy, printed from old microfilm. A news clipping from the local paper, the date at the top yellowed and faded.
My hands felt clumsy, disconnected from my body as I picked it up. Then she spoke the words that took the world from under my feet. Her voice was trembling, thick with a kind of horrified pity. "It's awful what happened to your family. I read the old news reports. The accident, your brother David's climbing accident, was so tragic. The police found his body after he'd been missing for a week. I can't imagine what your parents went through, having you get lost in those same woods just a few days later." The coffee mug slipped from my fingers. It didn't seem to fall. It just hung in the air for a second, and then it hit the linoleum floor. The sound was deafening, an explosion of shattering porcelain that ripped through the dead quiet of the kitchen. Hot coffee splashed across my shoes, but I didn't feel it. My world wasn't just shattering, it was gone, annihilated. Found his body after he'd been missing for a week. Lost in those same woods just a few days later. The timeline didn't work. The facts didn't fit. The simple, logical explanation I had built my entire life around, the angry, scared brother who had saved me, crumbled into dust. David was dead. He had died a week before I got lost. The memory, the one I had replayed a million times, flashed behind my eyes. But it was different now, corrupted, the truth twisting it into something monstrous. David, stepping out from between two oaks. His face wasn't pale from fear. It was the waxy, bloodless white of a corpse. His eyes weren't empty with shock. They were vacant, glassy, nothing behind them. His silence wasn't anger. It was the deep, profound silence of the grave. And his hand, Jesus Christ, his hand. I could feel it again, right now, on my wrist. The memory wasn't a memory anymore. It was a physical sensation, a damp, permeating cold that had nothing to do with the evening air, the cold of earth, the cold of something that had stopped living. The fingers that felt too long, wrapping all the way around my wrist. I wasn't listening to Chloe anymore. I couldn't hear her panicked apologies or her frantic questions. My gaze was locked on the kitchen window, on the view of the back lawn giving way to that impenetrable wall of trees.
The sun was just starting to burn off the morning mist, but the edge of the forest remained dark, swallowing the light. It looked hungry. One single question echoed in the ruins of my mind, a screaming whisper that was louder than anything I had ever heard. It clawed at my throat, stealing my breath, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me deeper than any ghost story ever could, that it would follow me for the rest of my life. If that wasn't David, then what the fuck grabbed my hand and led me out of those woods?